So the question, how long does a lick last, is pretty broad, so let's get ourselves on track and say we are licking wood. That is the wood on the inside bevel of a kendama, which, assuming that you're familiar with kendama, many kendama players like to lick the inside bevel here so that stall tricks such as this, where you're kind of relying on the bevel to have some grip on the wood, the lick just makes it a lot easier and grippier, and that's why they do it. They're not just gross people. But yeah, so the last time I was playing kendama, I was doing tricks, and reaping all the rewards of a nice wet bevel, but I started wondering, how often should I be licking this bevel for maximum lick benefit? Should I lick it every 10 seconds, every 10 minutes? I don't know, man, and that's what I wanted to find out. So today we are going to find that out. And is this whole bevel licking thing kind of gross? Like I said, yeah, it kind of is, but somebody's got to do it. And everybody licks their bevel, so it must be a good idea if everybody's doing it, right? So how are we going to do this? I've got all the documentation and my experimental analysis right here in front of me. We are going to start with a more technical experiment that will give us a time estimate of a lick's lifespan. How long does it last? And then we'll go to a more practical experiment, which will give us an estimate of the number of tricks and a practical time estimate of how many tricks we can get between when we should lick and lick again. Hopefully that makes sense. How long does the benefit of the lick actually last? And to be even more thorough, we're going to be using two different kinds of saliva actually. Excuse me. We're going to be using one kind of saliva actually. The two damas I'll be using to conduct these very sciencey experiments are first this chrome pop, which has, if I can show you, a pretty worn bevel. It's pretty broken in. And then the second, which you'll see denoted by its blue, white, and orange colors, the Kendama USA Kaizen, which the bevel on this one, it's hard to see here, but you'll see in the close-ups, is relatively fresh. So we're kind of spreading the horizons to get the best estimate of how long a lick will last. Now, both of these actually have beechwood tamas, which I think is the most common, but regardless of what kind of wood your tama is, as long as we're consistent with our experiment, it shouldn't matter as much. It should be relatively applicable to any kind of wood or angle that you happen to hold your kendama at, or whatever wood you have, or whatever. The lick is relatively the same. Maybe a more like porous, less dense wood would soak up your lick and hold it a little bit longer, but it's not that serious. All right, this is how long a lick lasts. Let's start with our technical analysis. So you can see what I'm getting at here. I'm starting by laying the kendama flat and then propping up the tama in a way that it relies on the grip between its bevel and the wood of the ken to stay up, and then tilting it ever so gently until it falls off. Now, first, I'm doing this with the dry bevel to get a benchmark measurement of, what does a dry bevel do? Where does it fall off when it's dry? And then when I lick the bevel and do this again, we can see exactly how long it takes to have the tama fall off at the same level that it fell off when it was dry, meaning that it's dry again and the lick is gone. So for example, with the kusa here, the dry approximately started about the 36 millimeter mark and falls off at the 20 millimeter mark. So that's 16 millimeters traveled, but that's really not important. What is important is how long it took to reach back to that dry level after it's been licked, because that's our indicator that the lick, or at least the benefits of the lick, are gone. In this case specifically, the fresh bevel grip lasted around 50 seconds on trial 1 and 58 seconds on trial 2, so that's how long it took to get back to those dry levels after it had been licked. So we'll say around 54 seconds average for this more fresh bevel to reach the dry state after being licked, according to this little test at least. And then you can see I repeated the same thing with the chrome pop, started around 34 millimeters, dropped off after about 12 millimeters when it was dry, but again, not important. In the case of this rough bevel, the grip lasted around 65 seconds on both attempts actually. Again, that's how long it took for the wet bevel to eventually fall off at the same level as the dry bevel. Level bevel, a little bit confusing, but there's the numbers. So you can see in test 1 there does seem to be a little bit of variance. Perhaps the rougher, more honed in bevel can hold a little bit more of your lick, and that's why it might have lasted a bit longer on the chrome pop. We'll have to see if that carries into the next experiment, because obviously that technical analysis is good, but it's a little bit orchestrated, a little bit too perfect. And if there's anything I know about playing kendama, at least for myself, none of it is orchestrated or perfect. So let's go to a more practical field test. And just like that, we are stepping up to the definitely not susceptible to any kind of human error field bedroom test. So this is where I am introduced not only as your science man, but as a variable in all of this. So what am I doing? Again, I'll break it down. Here, I'm getting comfortable with the dry bevel and how it feels in my hand as a human being, and then licking it and seeing how long until I can feel its effects wear off. It's the feel and the movement and the color of the bevel, the moisture that I see, the sounds that I'm hearing. That's all the stuff that I'm going by to see, if the lick is still there. The whole idea behind this is that that's what really matters, because if a technical analysis says it lasts 90 seconds, but you can only feel the benefits in your tricks for 60 seconds, then it's the 60 seconds that really matter when you're playing kendama, right? So one at a time, like I said, got comfortable with the simple bird stalls on the dry bevel, then I licked it up and I stopped right as soon as I felt the benefits from the lick vanish. I did 3 trials for each of the damas, which you're seeing now, so 6 total, and then once done, I'll be able to go back, look at the footage, and see not only how long the lick felt like it lasted to me, but also how many trick attempts I got in before the bevel seemed to dry out. A final thing to note as we're speeding through the end of these trials here, before we look at the results, it is important to know that the tricks you are doing, I assume, will affect how long your lick is going to last. So for example, if you're doing tricks in tama grip where, the bevel isn't moving around that much, I think your lick is going to last a lot longer than a trick where the tama is swinging around all over the place, drying out from the airflow. So obviously these numbers can only mean so much depending on your specific scenario. But either way, those numbers are what you're seeing right now. So this is some interesting stuff actually. If I summarize what we see here, the average tends to sit around 63 seconds between both of the damas, being how long the lick lasts, 63 seconds, which tends to be about 23 attempts at that bird stall. The interesting thing is that if you look at the outliers, they follow what we saw in that first test, which was that the lick seems like it can last a lot longer on a rough bevel when compared to the fresh one, since our lowest outlier did occur on the fresh bevel and our highest outlier did occur on that rough bevel. So there it is for those of you that just came for an answer. It seems around a minute is how long you're going to be looking at your lick lasting. Alright, do with that information what you will. Don't underlick your bevel, don't overlick your bevel. I think I achieved what I set out to do. I now know that my lick lasts around a minute, and that's important to me. Have a good day.